You pause for a moment right now as these words reach you, and something inside shifts, not dramatically, not with fireworks or sudden revelation, but with that quiet, unsettling awareness that creeps in when you realize the life you've been moving through might not actually be yours. You've felt it before, haven't you? That strange hollow ache in the middle of an ordinary day when the coffee has gone cold and the notifications keep buzzing, and for just a second you wonder why none of it feels like enough, why the promotions, the relationships, the carefully built routines still leave you staring at the ceiling at night, asking if this is really it. Most people push that question away immediately. They scroll, they plan, they tell themselves tomorrow will be different. But you're still here, listening, because some part of you knows that ignoring it has already cost you more than you want to admit. You are not alone in this quiet discomfort. Millions wake up each morning and step into lives that feel strangely borrowed, performing versions of themselves that satisfy everyone except the person looking back in the mirror. They smile in the photos, achieve the milestones, check the boxes society laid out so neatly, yet inside there is a persistent whisper that something essential has been misplaced along the way. This is not about dramatic failure or obvious tragedy. This is about the slow, invisible erosion of a life half-lived, the kind of existence where days blur together until years have vanished, and you suddenly realize you never truly chose any of it. The ache you feel right now, that slight tightening in your chest as these words land, is not weakness. It is the first honest signal that you are ready to wake up, ready to stop surviving and start living in a way that actually belongs to you. Let me speak directly to you for a moment. You did not come here by accident. Something in your life, some quiet regret, some restless longing, or perhaps a recent moment of clarity brought you to these words. And now that you're here, I want you to stay with this feeling. Don't numb it. Don't distract yourself from it. Lean in. Because what we are about to explore together is not another list of productivity hacks or surface-level motivation. This is a deep, unflinching look at the hidden architecture of a life truly lived, and the silent forces that keep most people from ever discovering it. You deserve to know what has been happening beneath the surface of your days, and more importantly, you deserve the chance to change it before more time slips away unnoticed. As we begin this journey together, I want you to understand that the transformation we're discussing does not require you to abandon everything or move to a mountaintop. It begins with something far more radical and intimate: honest awareness. The willingness to see clearly what most people spend their entire lives avoiding. And right now, in this moment, you're already taking that first courageous step simply by continuing to listen. So breathe with me. Feel the weight of these words settling into your bones, and prepare yourself, because what comes next will ask you to look at your life with new eyes, eyes that refuse to accept half measures any longer. Now, as we move forward, I want to prepare you for a truth that might initially feel heavy, but ultimately carries tremendous freedom. We are about to examine why so many of us are only existing instead of actually living, and to uncover the profound yet often invisible difference between mere survival and a life that feels vibrantly, unmistakably real. This is not about judgment. It is about compassionately seeing the patterns that have shaped us so we can finally choose something different. Take a moment to settle into this idea, because understanding this distinction has changed countless lives, and it can change yours as well. Most people are not truly living. They are surviving with remarkable efficiency. They wake up, fulfill obligations, meet expectations, and fall into bed exhausted, repeating the cycle with a quiet desperation they rarely name out loud. Sarah Thompson, a 38-year-old marketing director in Chicago, knew this pattern intimately. Each morning she rose before dawn, prepared lunches for her 2 children, answered emails during her commute, performed brilliantly in meetings, and returned home to help with homework and household tasks before collapsing in front of streaming shows that required no thought. She told herself she was building a good life. The house in the suburbs, the reliable salary, the family vacations planned months in advance. Yet at night, when the house grew quiet, Sarah would sit on the edge of her bed and feel an emptiness so complete it frightened her. She had survived another day, yes, but she could not remember the last time she had felt genuinely alive. The difference, she would later realize, was not in her circumstances, but in her awareness. Survival keeps the body moving and the bills paid. Living engages the soul. Survival reacts to whatever comes. Living chooses with intention. Sarah had mastered survival so completely that she had forgotten how to live, and in that forgetting, she had lost pieces of herself she could no longer name. This pattern repeats across countless lives in subtle but devastating ways. Consider Michael Rivera, a 42-year-old teacher in a small Texas town who once dreamed of writing novels that would move people to tears. He graded papers late into the night, coached the baseball team on weekends, and supported his aging parents while maintaining a marriage that had grown comfortably distant. Michael survived by staying busy. He survived by telling himself there would be time later for the books, for the adventures, for the version of himself that still felt electric with possibility. But years accumulated like quiet snowdrifts, and one afternoon while watching his students play during recess, he felt the crushing weight of all the unlived moments pressing down on his chest. He had survived admirably. He had provided, he had shown up, he had been responsible. Yet somewhere along the way, living had slipped through his fingers like sand. The hidden difference between survival and living lies in this. Survival protects you from immediate pain and discomfort. Living invites you into the full spectrum of human experience, including the risks, the uncertainties, and the breathtaking beauty that only exists on the other side of fear. Survival maintains. Living expands. Survival accumulates safety. Living accumulates meaning. And until we see this distinction clearly, we remain trapped in patterns that feel normal simply because everyone around us shares them. You may recognize yourself in these stories, perhaps not in the exact details, but in the emotional texture, that sense of moving through days that feel increasingly weightless. This recognition is not meant to shame you. It is meant to wake you. Because once you see the difference between existing and living, you cannot unsee it. And that seeing becomes the foundation for everything that comes next. The quiet desperation many feel is not a personal failing. It is the natural consequence of building a life designed primarily for survival in a world that rarely teaches us how to live. But awareness changes everything. And you right now are cultivating that awareness simply by staying with these words and allowing them to reach the deeper parts of you that have been waiting to be heard. As we continue this exploration together, I want to gently prepare you for what lies ahead in our next discussion. We are going to look closely at the invisible routine trap, those daily patterns that slowly render us unconscious in our own lives without us ever noticing the gradual surrender. This can feel confronting at first, but I promise you there is profound liberation in seeing these mechanisms clearly. So breathe deeply, stay open, and allow yourself to recognize the patterns without self-criticism. Understanding them is the first step toward breaking free. The invisible routine trap is one of the most powerful forces shaping modern human experience, and it operates so subtly that most people never realize they have been captured by it. Days begin to look identical. Mornings follow the same sequence of actions. Commutes blur into familiar autopilot. Conversations repeat the same surface topics, and evenings dissolve into familiar screens and scrolling. We become unconscious in our own lives, moving through them like characters in a play we no longer remember writing. The trap is invisible because it feels like responsibility. It feels like adulthood. It feels like the way things simply are. But beneath that comfortable familiarity lies a slow erosion of presence, vitality, and authentic connection to our own existence. Take Elena Petrova, a 51-year-old accountant in Seattle who had built her entire identity around reliability. For 27 years, she followed the same route to work, ate the same lunch at her desk, and returned home to the same evening rituals of dinner, television, and early bedtime. She prided herself on never missing a deadline, never forgetting an anniversary, never disrupting the smooth machinery of her carefully ordered world. Yet on her 50th birthday, as friends and family sang around a cake she had chosen herself, Elena felt a wave of panic so intense she had to excuse herself to the bathroom. In the mirror, she saw a woman who had become a ghost in her own story. The routines had protected her from chaos, yes. They had given her security and respect, but they had also stolen her attention so completely that she could not remember the last time she had made a decision based purely on what she wanted rather than what was expected. The routine had become her prison, and she had been its willing guard for decades. This unconscious living happens gradually, so almost tenderly. One small compromise at a time. One postponed dream. One conversation avoided because it might rock the boat. One passion set aside because there simply isn't time. The brain, seeking efficiency above all else, turns these choices into automatic behaviors. And before long, we are sleepwalking through what should be the most precious years of our existence. We stop noticing the changing light outside our windows. We stop hearing the subtle shifts in our partner's voice that signal they need us. We stop feeling the quiet longings that once stirred us toward growth and adventure. The routine trap is particularly dangerous because it masquerades as stability. Society celebrates it. Colleagues admire it. Families depend on it. Yet inside, something essential dies a little more each day until one morning we wake up and realize we no longer recognize the person we have become. The unconsciousness deepens when routines become intertwined with our sense of identity. We become the reliable one, the hard-working one, the always available one. And these labels feel like achievements rather than limitations. But what happens when the routines that once protected us begin to suffocate the very life they were meant to support? What happens when we realize we have traded our wild, unpredictable, magnificent potential for the safety of repetition? These are the questions that surface when we finally see the trap for what it is, and seeing it, truly seeing it, creates the possibility of choosing differently, not by destroying everything overnight, but by beginning to insert moments of conscious choice into the familiar patterns, small rebellions of presence, brief windows of genuine feeling, the first cracks in the invisible walls that have kept us asleep. You may feel some resistance as these ideas settle in. That is natural. The mind that has been comfortable in routine will fight to maintain its familiar territory. But beneath that resistance lies something far more powerful. The part of you that still remembers what it feels like to be fully awake to your own life. That part is listening right now, and it is already beginning to stir. Moving forward in our conversation, I want to prepare you for an honest examination of how distractions and constant stimulation silently steal our attention and ultimately our lives. This topic touches something very tender in all of us because we have all felt the pull of endless information and entertainment. Allow yourself to approach this with curiosity rather than guilt. We are not here to shame modern technology, but to understand its impact so we can reclaim what belongs to us. Take a moment to center yourself and let us explore this together with open hearts and clear eyes. Distractions and constant stimulation have become the background music of contemporary existence, playing so continuously that we rarely notice when the volume becomes deafening. Notifications, endless content, multiple screens, urgent messages, they arrive in a steady stream that fragments our attention into smaller and smaller pieces until we lose the ability to focus deeply on anything that truly matters. The average person now spends hours each day consuming information that rarely nourishes them, while the moments that could have been filled with genuine connection, creation, or presence slip away unnoticed. This is not simply about productivity. It is about the theft of our finite, irreplaceable life energy. Consider David Okoro, a 34-year-old software engineer in Atlanta who once loved playing jazz piano. In his early 20s, music had been his sanctuary, the place where time dissolved, and he felt most like himself. But as his career advanced and his phone became an extension of his hand, David found himself reaching for it during every spare moment. While waiting for coffee, while sitting on the toilet, while lying in bed unable to sleep. The jazz piano gathered dust in the corner of his apartment. The deep focus required for improvisation felt increasingly impossible as his attention span shrank. He told himself he was staying informed, staying connected, staying relevant. Yet deep down, he knew he was using the constant stimulation to avoid the quiet spaces where his real feelings lived. The fear of not being successful enough. The grief over his father's death 2 years earlier. The growing distance in his relationship with his partner. The stimulation kept these truths at bay, but it also kept him from becoming the man he still hoped to be. The silent theft happens through the brain's natural reward systems. Each notification, each like, each short video delivers a tiny hit of dopamine that feels harmless in isolation. But over months and years, these micro-rewards rewire our nervous systems to crave constant novelty while losing tolerance for the slower, richer experiences that create lasting fulfillment. We become addicted to stimulation while starving for meaning. We trade the depth of real conversation for the shallowness of comment sections. We exchange the satisfaction of creating something with our hands or minds for the temporary high of consuming what others have created. And in this exchange, something sacred is lost, our ability to be fully present with our own lives. And this pattern becomes especially tragic when we consider what we miss while distracted. The way sunlight moves across the floor in late afternoon. The subtle expressions on a child's face when they are trying to tell us something important. The creative ideas that only emerge in boredom. The gentle unfolding of our own thoughts when given space to breathe. These are not small things. They are the raw material of a life that feels worth living. When constant stimulation steals our attention, it steals our capacity to witness our own existence. And without that witnessing, we drift further and further from ourselves. Yet even as I share these observations, I want you to know there is hope. Awareness itself begins the process of reclamation. Every time you notice yourself reaching for distraction, you create a small space of choice. Every time you choose presence over stimulation, even for a few minutes, you strengthen the muscle of attention that makes genuine living possible. The battle is not against technology itself, but against the unconscious habits that allow it to control us. And you, right now, are winning small victories simply by maintaining focus through these words and allowing them to touch something real inside you. As we prepare to delve deeper, let us turn our attention to how comfort slowly becomes a prison that keeps people trapped in lives far smaller than their potential. This discussion may bring up some discomfort, and that is okay. Discomfort is often the doorway to growth. Settle in, breathe through any resistance, and allow yourself to consider how safety and comfort, while valuable, can also become the most subtle form of limitation. Comfort slowly becomes a prison when we prioritize it above all else. The comfortable job that no longer challenges us. The comfortable relationship that has grown stale but feels safer than change. The comfortable habits that protect us from risk while preventing us from expanding. We tell ourselves we are being responsible, being practical, being mature. But over time, The walls of comfort close in so gradually that we do not notice our world shrinking until the space feels suffocating. The prison is well appointed. It has nice furniture and predictable routines and social approval, but it lacks the oxygen of growth, the electricity of authentic desire, the expansive view that only comes from stepping beyond what feels safe. Rebecca Chen, a 47-year-old real estate agent in Boston, built her entire life around comfort after a difficult divorce in her 30s. She chose the safe neighborhoods, the reliable clients, the relationships that required minimal emotional investment. She avoided travel because it disrupted her schedule. She avoided new friendships because they might demand vulnerability. She avoided creative risks because failure would threaten her carefully maintained stability. For years, she told herself she was content. But during a routine medical appointment, when the doctor asked about her stress levels, Rebecca broke down in tears she could not explain. The comfort had become a cage so comfortable she had stopped noticing the bars. She had traded the possibility of a larger, more passionate life for the guarantee of never feeling too much. And in that trade, she had lost contact with the woman who once dreamed of painting landscapes and living near the ocean. The psychology of comfort is deeply rooted in our survival instincts. The nervous system prefers predictability because predictability equals safety. But human beings are not meant to remain in perpetual safety. We are designed for growth, for challenge, for the kind of discomfort that stretches us into more complete versions of ourselves. When comfort becomes our highest value, we slowly die while still breathing. We lose our edge. We lose our curiosity. We lose the vibrant energy that comes from pursuing what truly matters even when it scares us. The prison of comfort is particularly insidious because it feels like success. Society rewards it. Advertisements celebrate it. Friends envy it. Yet inside the comfortable prison, many people experience a slow, quiet despair that has no obvious cause. And as this awakening begins to take root within you, something powerful starts to stir in the quiet spaces between your thoughts. A recognition that the real battlefield was never out there in the world of circumstances and other people, but right here inside your own mind. You have already begun to see how so many lives drift along in patterns of mere existence. And now the path forward requires you to face the most intimate and decisive conflict of all, the one that determines whether you will finally claim the life that is truly yours or remain a prisoner of invisible forces within. This is where everything changes, not through external achievements or dramatic gestures, but through learning to win the battle inside your mind, where every choice, every moment of courage, and every step toward authentic living is either born or quietly abandoned. Feel that truth settling into your chest right now, because this inner work is not optional if you want to move beyond survival and into something that feels deeply alive. You have carried these mental patterns for years, perhaps, without fully naming them, and facing them directly may bring up waves of discomfort, but also waves of unexpected relief, as if someone has finally handed you the map to territory you have been lost in for far too long. The mind is a remarkable instrument, capable of imagining beautiful futures and solving impossible problems. Yet it can also become the greatest obstacle to the very life you long for. Many people spend decades believing every thought that passes through their heads, treating them as absolute truth rather than the shifting stories they often are. Right now, as these words reach you, notice any resistance arising, that small voice suggesting this might be too difficult or that you are not the kind of person who can change your inner world. That voice is part of what we will explore together, gently and honestly, because understanding it is the beginning of freedom. We are about to step into the territory of the mind with compassion and clarity, examining the hidden mechanisms that have shaped your days more than you may realize. This exploration will ask you to look inward with new eyes, and in doing so, it will offer you the power to respond differently, to choose thoughts that serve your growth rather than diminish it. Take a slow breath with me here and allow yourself to become curious about what has been happening inside your head all these years, because this curiosity alone begins to loosen the grip of old patterns. Now, as we move deeper into this part of our journey together, I want to prepare you for a foundational truth that can feel both unsettling and incredibly liberating. We are about to examine how the human brain is not always telling the truth, how it creates cognitive distortions, negative assumptions, and emotional reactions that trap us in mental loops we did not consciously choose. This discussion may mirror some of your private struggles, and that is perfectly okay. Approaching it with openness rather than defensiveness will allow these insights to land where they are needed most, helping you see the mind not as an enemy, but as a tool that sometimes needs careful guidance. Let us walk through this together, honoring the complexity of human experience while discovering ways to step outside the traps that have limited you. The human brain is not always telling the truth, and recognizing this single fact can begin to unravel years of unnecessary suffering. It constantly filters reality through lenses shaped by past experiences, fears, and cultural conditioning, often presenting distorted versions of events that feel completely real in the moment. Cognitive distortions creep in quietly, turning neutral situations into threats, minor setbacks into evidence of personal failure, and temporary emotions into permanent states of being. You might catch yourself assuming the worst about a friend's silence, believing it means they are angry with you, when in reality they are simply distracted by their own challenges. Or you replay a conversation from work, convinced your comment sounded foolish, even though no one else gave it a second thought. These mental habits create emotional reactions that feel automatic and overwhelming, pulling you away from the present moment and into stories that drain your energy and dim your sense of possibility. The brain evolved to keep us safe by spotting dangers quickly. But in modern life, that same mechanism turns everyday uncertainties into sources of chronic anxiety, making mountains out of molehills and convincing us we are smaller than we truly are. Consider James Harlan, a 45-year-old construction supervisor in Denver who had always prided himself on his strength and reliability. After a difficult childhood marked by his father's unpredictable temper, James's mind developed a powerful habit of scanning for rejection in every interaction. When his wife came home tired and quiet after a long day, his brain immediately spun a story that she was disappointed in him, that he was failing as a husband, that their marriage was slowly unraveling. These negative assumptions triggered waves of defensiveness and withdrawal, creating distance where none needed to exist. He would lie awake at night, replaying minor disagreements, his emotional reactions building walls that left him feeling isolated even while lying next to the person he loved most. James did not realize his brain was not presenting objective truth, but a distorted projection rooted in old wounds. The hidden mental trap kept him trapped in cycles of self-protection that prevented deeper intimacy and joy. Only when he began questioning these automatic thoughts did he start to see his wife's fatigue as simply human rather than evidence of his inadequacy. The shift was gradual, filled with moments of doubt, but each time he chose to pause and examine the distortion, he reclaimed a small piece of his emotional freedom and his capacity to love without fear. These patterns affect every area of life, from the way we interpret feedback at work to how we view our own potential for change. The brain loves familiarity, even when that familiarity is painful, because the unknown feels far more threatening. It will generate reasons why you should not pursue that dream, why you are not ready, why others will judge you harshly. Emotional reactions follow these thoughts like shadows, flooding your body with stress hormones that make clear thinking even harder. Yet the beautiful truth is that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that can observe them, question them, and choose whether to believe them. This awareness is your greatest ally in winning the battle inside your mind. And it grows stronger every time you catch a distortion in the act and gently redirect your focus toward what is actually happening rather than what your mind fears might happen. You may feel a quiet hope rising as you consider this possibility, because it means the power to change has always been closer than you realized, waiting inside the very moments where you once felt powerless. As we continue forward in this exploration, I want to emotionally prepare you for our next discussion, one that touches on a force so universal and yet so personal that it shapes nearly every decision we make. We are about to look closely at fear as an invisible controller, examining how it silently directs our choices, actions, relationships, and dreams, often without us ever noticing its hand on the wheel. This topic may bring up memories or current tensions, and I invite you to meet them with kindness toward yourself. Fear is not the enemy to destroy, but a signal to understand, and seeing it clearly can transform it from a prison guard into a wise but sometimes overly cautious companion. Settle into this next layer with the knowledge that many before you have faced these fears and emerged more alive than ever. Fear as an invisible controller operates with remarkable subtlety, whispering in the background of your mind and shaping your days in ways that feel like simple practicality or common sense. It tells you to stay in the familiar job rather than risk pursuing work that lights you up, to keep quiet in conversations rather than speak your truth, to maintain relationships that no longer nourish you because the alternative feels too uncertain. This fear does not always arrive as panic or terror. More often, it masquerades as reasonable caution, as the voice of experience, as concern for those who depend on you. Yet over time, its constant influence shrinks your world, keeping your actions small, your relationships surface level, and your dreams tucked away in the category of someday. You have likely felt its presence in quiet moments of hesitation, when an opportunity appeared and something inside tightened, urging you to play it safe instead of stepping forward. Look at the life of Lena Morales, a 37-year-old graphic designer in Miami who grew up watching her parents struggle through financial instability after immigrating from Cuba. Fear became her constant advisor, steering her away from bold creative risks and towards steady freelance work that paid the bills but left her uninspired. She turned down a chance to partner in a small studio because the fear of instability triggered memories of childhood hunger and uncertainty. In her marriage, fear kept her from addressing growing emotional distance with her husband, convincing her that rocking the boat might lead to abandonment and loneliness. Her dreams of illustrating children's books remained hidden in notebooks she rarely opened, because fear told her that sharing her art would invite criticism she could not handle. The invisible controller shaped her choices so completely that she began to lose touch with the vibrant, imaginative woman she had been in her youth. Days passed in a fog of quiet compliance, and only after a health scare that reminded her of life's fragility did Lena begin to notice how fear had been running the show. She started small, sharing one drawing with a friend, then taking on a passion project, despite the financial uncertainty. Each step felt terrifying, yet each also brought back fragments of aliveness she had forgotten were possible. Fear did not disappear, but its control weakened as she learned to act alongside it rather than obey it blindly. This pattern of control extends into the deepest parts of our identity, influencing not just what we do, but who we believe we are allowed to become. Fear keeps us from vulnerability in relationships, convincing us that true closeness will inevitably lead to pain. It prevents us from setting boundaries because disappointing others feels unbearable. It even distorts our dreams, making them seem childish or unrealistic, so we never have to face the possibility of failure. The emotional weight of living under this invisible controller accumulates over years, creating a low-grade exhaustion that many mistake for normal adulthood. Yet when we begin to name the fear and examine its roots, something remarkable happens. We discover that most of what it warns us about never actually materialize, or if it does, we are far more capable of handling it than we believed. This recognition creates space for new choices, choices rooted in courage rather than avoidance, in possibility rather than limitation. You may notice your own fears surfacing as you listen, and that is a positive sign. It means you are already beginning to loosen their hold simply by bringing them into the light of awareness. We are building momentum now in our understanding of the inner world, and I want to guide you thoughtfully into the next area we will explore together. We are about to unpack the difference between overthinking and real thinking, revealing how endless mental activity often becomes an escape from meaningful action and from truly living. This conversation may resonate with habits you recognize in yourself, and I encourage you to approach it with patience and self-compassion. Many of us have used thinking as a shield against the vulnerability of doing, and seeing this pattern clearly opens the door to more empowered ways of moving through life. Breathe into any defensiveness that arises, and let us discover together how to reclaim the power of purposeful thought. Overthinking versus real thinking marks one of the most common yet overlooked barriers to authentic living, because the mind can become so skilled at analyzing, planning, and worrying that it convinces us we are making progress when we are actually standing still. Real thinking is focused, creative, and oriented toward solutions or deeper understanding. It moves us forward. Overthinking, by contrast, spins in circles, revisiting the same concerns with slight variations, generating anxiety without resolution. It becomes an escape from action, a comfortable way to avoid the risks inherent in actually trying, deciding, or changing. You know this pattern intimately, perhaps, lying awake at night dissecting conversations or imagining every possible outcome of a decision until exhaustion sets in and nothing has been resolved. The endless thinking feels productive, even responsible, but it quietly steals your life force and keeps you trapped in analysis rather than experience. Take the story of Marcus Hale, a 52-year-old high school principal in Portland who had dreamed for years of writing a memoir about his experiences growing up in a turbulent family. His mind was brilliant at overthinking every aspect of the project. He would spend hours researching publishing options, imagining critical reviews, worrying about what former colleagues might think if personal details emerged. This mental activity consumed his evenings and weekends, creating the illusion of movement while the blank pages on his desk remained untouched. Overthinking became his hiding place, protecting him from the vulnerability of putting imperfect words on paper and from the possibility that the book might not succeed. Meanwhile, his real life continued in familiar patterns, with the same unfulfilled longing growing heavier each year. Marcus's breakthrough came during a quiet conversation with an old friend who asked him simply, "What if you just wrote one paragraph today without worrying about the rest?" That question pierced through the fog of overthinking and reminded him that real thinking serves action, not the other way around. He began writing in short, imperfect bursts, discovering that the act itself brought more clarity than all the mental preparation combined. The fear did not vanish, but the escape route of endless thinking lost its appeal once he tasted the satisfaction of actual creation. This distinction matters deeply because our culture celebrates busy minds and constant mental activity, rarely acknowledging how often it serves as sophisticated procrastination. Overthinking allows us to feel intelligent and thorough while avoiding the discomfort of stepping into uncertainty. It masquerades as preparation when it is often fear wearing a more respectable mask. When we learn to interrupt these loops and redirect energy toward real thinking, focused and purposeful, we reclaim hours, days, and ultimately years that would otherwise dissolve into mental noise. The shift requires practice and patience, noticing when the mind begins to spiral and gently bringing it back to the present choice available right now. You may feel a sense of recognition as these ideas connect with your own experiences. And that recognition itself is a form of real thinking, the kind that can lead to meaningful change if you let it. As we draw closer to even more personal territory in this inner battle, let me prepare you for the discussion ahead with care and honesty. We are going to explore why self-doubt keeps people trapped in smaller lives than they deserve, examining its roots and its powerful hold on our potential. This may touch tender places where you have questioned your worth or abilities, and that is a sign we are approaching something important. Meet these insights with the same compassion you would offer a close friend, because self-doubt thrives in secrecy and diminishes in the light of understanding. Together we will see how to begin loosening its grip so you can step into the fuller life that is still available to you. Self-doubt keeps people trapped in smaller lives than they deserve by constantly undermining their sense of capability and worthiness, creating invisible barriers that feel completely real. It whispers that you are not experienced enough, not talented enough, not strong enough to pursue what truly calls to you. This doubt often stems from early experiences, critical voices we internalized, or repeated setbacks that the mind turns into evidence of fundamental inadequacy. It results in playing small, in saying no to opportunities that could expand us, in settling for relationships and careers that feel safe but uninspiring. The tragedy lies in how convincing it sounds, how it borrows the voice of realism when it is actually fear speaking. Many people carry this doubt for decades, achieving outward success while feeling like imposters inside, never fully owning their accomplishments or daring to reach higher. Elena Vasquez, a 28-year-old elementary school teacher in Phoenix, knew this trap well after growing up with a mother who was quick to point out flaws as a way of preparing her for the world. Self-doubt became Elena's constant companion, telling her she was too quiet to lead parent workshops, too inexperienced to advocate for curriculum changes, too ordinary to ever write the children's stories she secretly composed in her journal. She turned down a promotion to curriculum coordinator because doubt convinced her she would fail publicly and disappoint everyone. In her personal life, she stayed in a lukewarm relationship, doubting anyone better would see value in her. The smaller life she lived felt familiar and manageable, yet it left her with a persistent ache of unfulfilled potential that surfaced during quiet moments. A turning point arrived when a mentor noticed her hesitation during a meeting and asked her directly what she would do if she believed in herself completely for just one day. That question planted a seed that grew slowly through small experiments in courage, like facilitating a workshop despite the racing heart and sharing one story with her students. Each success chipped away at the doubt, revealing it as a story rather than truth. Elena began to see that self-doubt was not a reflection of reality, but a habit of mind that could be interrupted and rewritten with evidence of her own capability. The mechanism of self-doubt is particularly effective because it feels protective, shielding us from potential disappointment or embarrassment. Yet in protecting us from failure, it also protects us from success, from growth, from the deep satisfaction that comes from stretching beyond what feels comfortable. When we begin to challenge these doubts with small, consistent actions and with kinder internal dialogue, we create new neural pathways that support confidence and possibility. The lives waiting on the other side of self-doubt are not perfect or free of challenges, but they are larger, more authentic, and far more aligned with the potential that still burns inside you. You deserve to live in that larger space, and the first steps toward it are available the moment you choose to question the doubt rather than obey it. And with this new awareness of your inner narrative taking root, something begins to shift inside you, a quiet but unmistakable turning point where the battle in your mind starts yielding ground to the possibility of something more deliberate and alive. You have faced the distortions, the fears, the endless thinking, the doubts, and the hunger for approval, and in doing so, you have cleared space for a different way of moving through your days. No longer content to simply understand the traps, you now stand at the threshold of building, of taking the insights you have gathered and shaping them into a life that reflects the person you are awakening to be. This is not about grand overnight transformations that fade by next week. This is about the patient, courageous work of constructing a reality that feels like yours, one choice at a time, even when the path ahead still carries uncertainty. You may feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness as these words settle in, and that is exactly right, because building requires both hope and honesty about the effort involved. The life you have been waiting for will not arrive on its own. It must be built, and the building begins the moment you decide to stop postponing your participation in it. You have likely sensed this truth in quiet moments before, when the gap between your dreams and your daily reality felt too wide to ignore. Many people reach this point and still hesitate, hoping that clarity or perfect conditions will finally make action feel safe and exciting. But here is where the real work reveals itself, not as punishment, but as the most liberating choice available to you. We are about to step into the heart of what it means to build rather than wait, and I want you to feel supported as we do. This part of our journey honors the human tendency to delay while offering a compassionate path beyond it. The momentum you are building inside right now, simply by continuing to listen and reflect, is already part of the construction. So breathe into the possibility that your life is not something that happens to you, but something you can actively shape, starting today, starting with the next small decision you make after these words end. Now, as we move forward together, I want to prepare you for a truth that may challenge some long-held assumptions, but also bring tremendous relief. We are about to explore why you should stop waiting for motivation before taking action, understanding how motivation naturally changes and disappears while consistent action creates its own powerful momentum. This discussion may touch on times when you have felt stuck waiting for the right feeling to arrive, and that is okay. Many of us have been there, believing we needed to feel ready before beginning. Approaching this with openness will help you see action, not as a burden, but as the very source of the energy you have been seeking. Let us examine this together, honoring your past efforts while opening new doors for the future. People often wait for motivation as if it were a reliable guest that shows up on schedule. But the truth is that motivation is fleeting, influenced by moods, energy levels, external circumstances, and even the weather. It rises like a wave after an inspiring conversation or a powerful insight, then recedes just as quickly when daily pressures return or when the novelty wears off. Waiting for it keeps countless dreams suspended in the realm of someday, creating a cycle where inaction breeds more doubt, and the absence of progress makes motivation even harder to find. Action, by contrast, creates momentum through its own quiet alchemy. Each step taken, no matter how small or imperfect, generates evidence that you are capable, which in turn builds the internal resources needed for the next step. This is not about forcing yourself through gritted teeth, but about understanding that the doing itself rewires your brain and emotions in ways waiting never can. You may notice a subtle resistance as these ideas land, that familiar voice suggesting you need more preparation first, and noticing it is already a form of action that breaks the old pattern. Consider the story of Nathan Brooks, a 43-year-old mechanic in Cleveland, who had spent years dreaming of opening his own custom bike shop. Motivation would surge on weekends when he tinkered in his garage, sketching designs and imagining the satisfied customers, but it vanished during long work weeks filled with overtime and family responsibilities. He waited for the perfect financial moment, the perfect burst of energy, the perfect sign that the risk would pay off. Years slipped by while his sketches gathered dust, and his sense of unfulfilled potential grew heavier. One evening, after a particularly discouraging day at the shop where he worked, Nathan decided to take one small action despite feeling zero motivation. He called a local small business advisor and scheduled a simple consultation. That single call, born not from inspiration but from a weary determination to stop waiting, opened doors he had not anticipated. The advisor connected him with resources, and each subsequent action, filing paperwork, researching suppliers even when motivation was absent, built a momentum that carried him through the doubts. Within 18 months, his small shop was open, not because he finally felt ready, but because he had acted his way into readiness. Nathan later reflected that waiting had kept him safe but stagnant, while action had turned his dream into something real and breathing, complete with the inevitable challenges that also brought unexpected fulfillment. This pattern repeats in quieter ways across many lives. Someone waits to exercise until they feel energetic, only to remain sedentary. Another delays having honest conversations in their relationship until the mood feels right, allowing distance to widen. The hidden cost is not just delayed dreams, but a gradual erosion of self-trust, as the mind learns that intentions without follow-through are normal. When you stop waiting and begin acting, even in tiny increments, you interrupt this erosion and start building evidence of your own reliability to yourself. The momentum that follows is not always dramatic at first. It may feel like simple persistence on ordinary days, yet over time, it compounds into a life that moves forward under its own power rather than depending on unpredictable emotional states. You deserve to experience this momentum, and the beautiful part is that it becomes available the moment you choose one small action today, regardless of how motivated you feel in this exact moment. As we continue deepening our understanding of what it truly means to build a life, I want to emotionally prepare you for the next layer, one that reveals the quiet power hidden in everyday choices. We are about to discuss how small habits slowly change human identity, showing how tiny actions, repeated over time, create powerful transformations that reshape who you are from the inside out. This may resonate with areas where you have tried big changes that did not last, and that is a common experience worth approaching with kindness. Small habits succeed where grand gestures often fail because they work with the natural rhythms of human psychology rather than against them. Settle into this idea with curiosity about your own daily patterns, because what we explore next has the potential to rewrite your sense of self in ways that feel both gentle and profound. Small habits that slowly change human identity operate like gentle currents beneath the surface of your days, reshaping your character and possibilities so gradually that the transformation can feel surprising when you finally notice it. A single minute of mindful breathing each morning may seem insignificant, yet repeated consistently, it builds a foundation of inner calm that influences how you respond to stress at work or in relationships. Writing 3 sentences in a journal before bed appears trivial, but over months it cultivates self-awareness and clarity that ripple into better decisions and deeper connections. These tiny actions accumulate not just as behaviors, but as new facets of identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles with consistency and begin to embody someone who follows through. The power lies in their humility. Because they are small, they bypass the resistance that meets massive overhauls, allowing your brain to integrate them without triggering old fears of failure. Take the journey of Priya Sharma, a 31-year-old software developer in Austin who felt disconnected from her creative side after years in a demanding tech job. She had tried intense resolutions like committing to daily painting sessions, only to abandon them when work deadlines intensified and motivation faded. Feeling increasingly like a person defined by code and deadlines rather than imagination, Priya started with something almost embarrassingly small. Each day after lunch, she spent 5 minutes doodling in a notebook at her desk. No pressure for quality and no expectation of masterpieces. At first, it felt pointless, a minor rebellion against her packed schedule. But those 5 minutes began to shift something. She found herself looking forward to them, noticing details in the world around her that sparked ideas, and gradually carrying a quieter sense of creative identity into other areas of her life. Over a year, the habit expanded naturally into longer sessions on weekends, and Priya began sharing her work online, eventually leading to a small side project selling prints that brought both income and joy. The tiny action had not just added a hobby, but transformed how she saw herself. From a purely analytical professional to someone who carried creativity as an essential part of who she was, the fears of being too late or not talented enough lost their power because the habit had already proven her capacity through consistent, gentle evidence. This process of identity change through small habits taps into the psychological principle that we become what we repeatedly do. Each action votes for the kind of person you are becoming, and when those votes accumulate, they outweigh the old self-image that once felt so fixed. You may catch yourself thinking that your own habits are too entrenched for this to work, and that thought itself is worth noticing because it reveals where old identity is fighting to stay in place. Yet the evidence from countless human experiences shows that consistent small steps create neural pathways that make new behaviors feel increasingly natural. The transformation is not always linear. There will be days when you miss the habit and self-judgment arises. But returning to it without harshness strengthens the identity even more, teaching you that you are someone who can begin again. In this way, small habits do not just build a life. They rebuild you from within, aligning your daily existence with the deeper longings you have been carrying, perhaps for years. We are making meaningful progress in understanding how to build rather than wait. And now, I invite you to join me in exploring a principle that flips many common beliefs on their head. We are about to examine why action creates confidence instead of waiting for confidence to create action, uncovering how the sequence many people assume is actually reversed in the psychology of real growth. This may challenge times when you held back until you felt sure of yourself, and that is a vulnerable place many of us know well. Approach this with the compassion you would offer someone learning to walk again after a long injury. The insights ahead can free you to move forward even when self-assurance feels distant. Action creates confidence instead of confidence creating action, because the human nervous system learns through experience rather than anticipation. Waiting to feel confident before trying something new keeps people paralyzed, as the mind generates endless reasons why failure is likely and safety lies in staying still. But when you take action despite the absence of confidence, each small success registers in your body as proof of capability, gradually building the emotional state you thought needed to come first. This reversal is liberating because it puts the power in your hands immediately rather than tying it to an elusive internal feeling. Public speaking terrifies many until they begin speaking anyway in low-stakes settings and discover that the confidence emerges from the doing, not the other way around. The same holds for starting conversations, launching projects, or expressing deeper feelings in relationships. Action forges the neural and emotional foundation that confidence then rests upon. Look at the experience of Derek Washington, a 50-year-old warehouse manager in Detroit who had always dreamed of mentoring young people in his community. but felt he lacked the confidence to lead any formal program. He saw himself as too ordinary, too rough around the edges from the years of manual labor, and assumed he needed to develop a more polished presence first. After hearing a story from a coworker about local youth struggling without guidance, Derek decided to act anyway. He started by simply showing up at a community center one evening a week and offering to help with basic skills workshops, despite his heart pounding with doubt. The first sessions were awkward. He stumbled over words and questioned his value. Yet as he continued acting, listening to the young people, and sharing practical lessons from his own life, he noticed something shifting. Their gratitude and engagement became evidence that he had something worthwhile to offer. Confidence grew not from preparation, but from repeated action, leading him to expand the program and eventually train other mentors. Derek realized he had spent decades waiting for a feeling that only emerged through movement, and in that realization, he found both regret for lost time and deep gratitude for the years still ahead. This principle applies across every domain of life because confidence is not a prerequisite, but a byproduct. It explains why so many successful individuals speak of acting their way through fear rather than eliminating it first. When you embrace this truth, you free yourself from the exhausting cycle of trying to manufacture internal readiness. Instead, you step into the arena with whatever courage is available in the moment, knowing that more will arrive through the process itself. You may feel a spark of possibility as you consider applying this to an area where you have been holding back, and that spark is the beginning of momentum. Trust it. Act on it. The confidence you seek is waiting on the other side of the first imperfect step. Discipline matters more than emotions and temporary feelings because emotions are designed to fluctuate, serving as signals rather than reliable guides for long-term direction. A burst of enthusiasm might get you started on a project, but when that feeling fades, as it always does, discipline becomes the bridge that carries you across the inevitable valleys. Without it, lives fill with abandoned goals and quiet disappointments that accumulate into regret. Discipline is not about punishment or military precision. It is the loving structure you give yourself to protect what matters most when motivation inevitably wanes. It shows up as the decision to write for 20 minutes, even when you feel uninspired, or to have the difficult conversation, even when anxiety rises. Over time, this practice builds self-respect that no temporary high can match, creating a life that stands on solid ground rather than shifting sands of mood. Consider Carla Esposito, a 39-year-old single mother in Philadelphia who had struggled for years with her health after her divorce left her emotionally drained. She knew she needed to exercise and eat better, but her feelings of exhaustion and overwhelm consistently won out, leading to cycles of starting strong and then stopping when life felt heavy. Discipline felt like another burden until she reframed it as an act of protection for her future self and her daughter. She began with non-negotiable commitments that respected her reality, like a 10-minute walk each morning before the day pulled her in different directions, and preparing one healthy meal in advance each Sunday regardless of how she felt. There were mornings when resistance screamed loudly and evenings when old habits called. Yet by honoring the discipline, even in small ways, Carla discovered that her emotions began to follow her actions rather than dictate them. Energy returned gradually, her confidence in her own reliability grew, and she became a woman who could show up for herself even on difficult days. The discipline did not eliminate her feelings of tiredness or doubt, but it gave them less power over the life she was building for herself and her child. This emphasis on discipline honors the truth that human beings thrive with boundaries and commitments that transcend the moment. It does not mean ignoring emotions, but understanding them as weather patterns, passing through rather than the foundation of your direction. When discipline becomes an expression of self-love rather than self-criticism, It transforms from a burden into a quiet superpower that allows you to build steadily, even when the path feels challenging. You have likely experienced glimpses of this in areas where you have followed through despite resistance, and those moments hold the blueprint for larger changes. The life you construct through discipline carries a deep sense of integrity that temporary feelings alone could never provide. We have traveled far in this exploration of building, and I want to guide you now into one of the most transformative principles available to any person seeking real change. We are about to uncover the hidden power of consistency and how repeated effort shapes human life in profound and lasting ways. This may connect with places where you have started strong but struggled to maintain effort over time. And that is a shared human experience worth approaching without judgment. Consistency is not glamorous, yet it is where true power resides, turning ordinary actions into extraordinary results. Let these ideas land softly, inviting you to see your own capacity for steady progress with fresh appreciation. The hidden power of consistency lies in its ability to compound small efforts into remarkable outcomes that no single burst of activity could ever achieve. A single workout does little, but months of consistent movement reshape your body and mind. One day of focused work barely registers, but years of steady application create mastery and opportunity. This power shapes human life because it works with the natural laws of growth rather than against them, gradually rewiring habits, strengthening character, and opening doors that sporadic effort leaves closed. Consistency builds trust with yourself and with others, creating a reputation of reliability that attracts support. There comes a moment in every human life when excuses stop sounding comforting and start sounding tragic. A moment when the distractions no longer numb the pain. A moment when the late nights, empty promises, abandoned goals, and silent self-betrayals become too heavy to ignore. And in that moment, something terrifying happens. The person is finally forced to confront themselves honestly. Not the version they show the world, not the personality they perform online, but the real person underneath the noise, the exhausted mind, the undisciplined habits, the hidden fears, the wasted potential, the dreams slowly dying from neglect. And perhaps the most painful realization a human being can experience is understanding that life did not defeat them. They slowly defeated themselves through comfort, avoidance, hesitation, and surrender. Because the truth is that most people do not lose their future in one dramatic collapse. They lose it quietly, one excuse at a time, one delay at a time, one moment of weakness repeated until it becomes identity. And if you are listening to these words right now while feeling tired of your own patterns, tired of your own inconsistency, tired of carrying a version of yourself you no longer want to be, then this moment matters more than you realize. Because this chapter is not about motivation anymore. It is about transformation. It is about becoming someone so mentally strong that pain no longer controls your direction. Someone who continues moving even when life becomes brutal. Someone who stops negotiating with weakness and finally becomes unstoppable through discipline. Pain changes people. But what most people never understand is that pain itself is not the enemy. Unused pain is the enemy. Pain ignored becomes suffering. Pain avoided becomes weakness. But pain faced honestly becomes strength. Every disciplined person eventually learns something the comfortable mind refuses to accept. Growth and discomfort are permanently connected. There is no meaningful transformation without resistance, no confidence without uncertainty, no strength without pressure, no discipline without sacrifice. The modern world teaches people to avoid pain at all costs, escape boredom immediately, escape loneliness immediately, escape discomfort immediately, escape silence immediately. But a life built entirely around comfort creates fragile minds, and fragile minds collapse under pressure. A young man named Julian understood this too late. For years, he built his life around avoiding discomfort. Whenever things became difficult, he quit. Whenever emotional pain appeared, he distracted himself. Whenever pressure rose, he escaped into comfort. At first, it seemed harmless. But slowly, his tolerance for struggle disappeared completely. Minor problems began overwhelming him emotionally. Rejection shattered him. Failure destroyed him. Responsibility exhausted him. One evening, after losing another opportunity because he lacked discipline, he sat alone in his apartment staring at unfinished goals scattered around his room like reminders of his own inconsistency. In that silence, he realized something devastating. His life was not difficult because the world was unfair. His life was difficult because he had trained himself to run from difficulty. That realization became the beginning of his transformation. Because the moment a person stops seeing pain as punishment and starts seeing it as training, everything changes psychologically. There is strength hidden inside suffering that most people never discover because they spend their entire lives escaping before transformation can occur. Pain forces human beings to confront themselves honestly. It exposes weaknesses. It reveals emotional dependency. It destroys illusions. And although painful, that process creates depth. People who survive difficult seasons with discipline often emerge mentally stronger than those who lived comfortably their entire lives. A woman named Elena experienced this after losing almost everything financially within a single year. She lost her apartment, her relationship collapsed, and she began questioning her worth completely. Every day felt emotionally unbearable. Fear followed her constantly. Some nights she cried herself to sleep, wondering if life had permanently defeated her. And yet slowly, through pain, something inside her began changing. She started waking up earlier despite exhaustion. She forced herself to continue applying for opportunities despite rejection. She learned how to remain calm during uncertainty. She stopped expecting life to feel easy all the time. Months later, she realized something extraordinary. The pain that once almost destroyed her had also rebuilt her into someone mentally stronger than she had ever been before. That is the paradox of suffering. The very experiences people pray to avoid are often the experiences that build the strongest minds. Failure carries this same hidden gift. Most people fear failure because they associate it with humiliation, weakness, or defeat. But failure is one of the greatest psychological training grounds in existence. Failure forces adaptation, reflection, humility, resilience, discipline. It strips away arrogance and teaches endurance. And people who survive repeated failure without surrender eventually develop something dangerous, emotional durability. A young boxer named Marcus learned this after losing 5 matches in a row. Every defeat humiliated him deeply. Friends stopped believing in him. His confidence collapsed. Even his own mind began whispering that maybe he simply was not talented enough. One night after another brutal loss, he sat alone in a locker room long after everyone had left. Blood on his face, hands trembling, eyes filled with frustration. He stared at himself in the mirror, asking one painful question. How many times can a person fail before they break? An older trainer quietly walked into the room and answered without being asked. The ones who become unstoppable are not the people who never fail. They are the people who refuse to stay down. Those words stayed inside Marcus forever. Because resilience is not built during easy seasons. It is built during moments where surrender feels justified, but discipline continues anyway. This is what mentally tough people understand deeply. Difficult things are not interruptions to growth. Difficult things are growth. That is why disciplined individuals intentionally embrace discomfort. They exercise even when tired. They study when distracted. They continue when results are invisible. They make sacrifices ordinary people avoid because they understand something most minds refuse to accept. Short-term comfort often creates long-term regrets. Short-term sacrifice often creates long-term freedom. Delayed gratification is one of the most powerful psychological abilities a human being can develop. The ability to sacrifice temporary pleasure for future fulfillment changes destinies completely. Most people destroy their futures slowly because they prioritize immediate emotional relief over meaningful long-term growth. They choose entertainment over education, comfort over discipline, pleasure over purpose, escape over responsibility. But disciplined people train themselves differently. They understand that every action is either building their future or weakening it. A young woman named Sophia dreamed of becoming a surgeon since childhood, but her journey demanded enormous sacrifice. While others spent nights partying, she studied alone for endless hours. While friends relaxed comfortably, she endured exhaustion and pressure most people could not tolerate. There were nights she questioned whether the sacrifice was worth it. Nights she cried from emotional exhaustion while staring at textbooks she could barely focus on anymore. But she continued because she understood something deeply. Temporary comfort could never compete with the future she was building. Years later, standing inside an operating room saving someone's life, she realized every lonely night, every sacrifice, every difficult decision had transformed her into someone extraordinary. This is the hidden beauty of discipline. Discipline asks for sacrifice first and rewards later. Comfort rewards immediately, but destroys slowly afterward. The frightening truth is that excuses have destroyed more human potential than failure ever will. Excuses sound harmless because they often contain partial truth. I'm tired. I'm stressed. I'll start tomorrow. I need more time. I'm not ready yet. But repeated excuses slowly poison identity. Every excuse teaches the mind weakness. Every excuse becomes permission to remain average. There was a man named Victor who spent years talking about the life he wanted while never taking real action consistently. He blamed circumstances constantly. Lack of opportunity, lack of support, lack of confidence. But deep down, he knew something painful. The real obstacle was not his environment. It was his unwillingness to endure discomfort consistently enough to transform. One morning, after wasting another year chasing distractions instead of purpose, he looked at himself in the mirror and realized something that shattered him emotionally. Nobody was coming to save him. That moment became freedom, because when excuses die, responsibility is born. And responsibility creates power. Self-respect grows through discipline in ways most people never fully understand. Confidence built only on compliments disappears quickly. But confidence built through self-discipline becomes unshakable because it is earned internally. Every difficult action completed, despite resistance, becomes proof of strength. Every promise kept builds trust within yourself. Every sacrifice honored creates dignity. A person who cannot trust themselves eventually struggles to respect themselves deeply. But disciplined people carry themselves differently because they know what they have survived internally. A woman named Claire experienced this transformation after years of self-hatred and inconsistency. She constantly broke promises to herself. Diets failed. Goals failed. Routines collapsed repeatedly. Eventually, she stopped believing her own words entirely. Then one winter morning, emotionally exhausted from disappointing herself again, she made one simple decision. She would stop focusing on perfection and focus instead on keeping small promises consistently. She began waking up at the same time daily, taking walks daily, reading daily, training daily. Slowly, discipline stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like self-respect. And for the first time in years, she looked at herself with pride instead of disappointment. That is what discipline truly gives people, not merely productivity, identity. The emotional intensity of life eventually tests every human being. There will be seasons where nothing feels certain, seasons where pain feels endless, seasons where progress disappears, seasons where loneliness becomes heavy. During those moments, weak minds search for escape immediately. But mentally strong people continue moving even without emotional certainty. That is what makes them unstoppable. Not perfection. Persistence. There's something deeply powerful about a person who continues despite suffering. Someone who keeps showing up while carrying invisible pain. Someone who keeps building while exhausted emotionally. Someone who remains disciplined while life feels unfair. That kind of strength changes destinies. A young man named Adrian understood this during the darkest period of his life. After losing his father unexpectedly, his entire world emotionally collapsed. Grief followed him everywhere. Some mornings he could barely breathe without feeling pain in his chest. Every part of him wanted to quit on life completely. But slowly, one difficult day at a time, he forced himself to continue honoring routines, training, working, reading, moving forward despite emotional devastation. Not because he felt strong, because he refused to become weak. Years later, he realized something profound. The discipline he once thought existed only for productivity had actually saved his life emotionally. Structure became stability. Routine became survival. Discipline became the bridge that carried him through suffering. This is why self-discipline is ultimately far deeper than achievement. It is emotional survival. It is psychological armor. It is the ability to remain standing while chaos tries to pull you apart internally. As life continues, you will meet two kinds of people repeatedly. People who become softer every time life hurts them, and people who become stronger every time life tests them. The difference is not luck. It is mindset. It is discipline. It is the willingness to endure temporary pain for permanent growth. Human beings become unstoppable the moment they stop needing life to feel easy before they move forward. Read that again carefully in your mind, because that truth can transform an entire existence. You do not become mentally strong when everything feels comfortable. You become mentally strong when you continue despite discomfort. You become unstoppable when excuses no longer control your choices. You become powerful when your future matters more than temporary pleasure. And perhaps most importantly, you become free when your discipline becomes stronger than your emotions. One day, if you continue this journey long enough, something extraordinary begins happening internally. The person who once feared pain becomes someone capable of handling pressure calmly. The person who once needed motivation learns how to move without it. The person who once escaped discomfort begins walking directly toward challenges because they understand growth lives there. That transformation feels almost spiritual. Because discipline does not merely change habits, it changes identity. And eventually, after enough pain survived, enough sacrifices honored, enough difficult days endured, you stop recognizing the weaker version of yourself who once surrendered easily. You become someone stronger, someone calmer, someone focused, someone dangerous in the most beautiful way possible, someone unstoppable. And before this audiobook comes to an end, I want you to understand something deeply personal. If you listened this far, then there is already something powerful inside you. Maybe the world cannot see it yet. Maybe even you have doubted it for years. But the fact that you are still searching for growth, still fighting your own limitations, still trying to become better despite everything you have survived, that matters more than you realize. Real transformation does not happen overnight, but every moment you choose discipline over comfort, growth over excuses, and purpose over distraction, you are rebuilding yourself quietly from the inside out. And one day, the same pain that once almost destroyed you will become the reason you are mentally unbreakable. If this audiobook spoke to something deep inside your heart, then continue this journey with us. Support the channel by subscribing, liking the video, and sharing it with someone who needs these words right now. There are millions of people silently fighting battles inside their minds, and sometimes one message, one chapter, one moment of truth can completely change a life. Keep growing, keep fighting, keep becoming stronger than the person you were yesterday, because your future is still waiting for you. And the most powerful version of yourself has not even arrived yet.